This is the Zemar Podcast. Elite Benefits of America helps small and mid-sized companies with their health insurance programs. And now, your host, Butch Zemar.
A 50-mile run is hard, but the training is harder than the actual race. But training for any run, and not just the 50-mile run, it's no easy task. It takes a lot of effort. But there is reason why they have this cliche or phrase that says couch to 5K, right? It's real, it's outlined, people could do it, people do it on a regular basis. It could be a lifetime goal that they had. But to go through times with that amount of training, people think it's crazy, or even just the end race, right? So there are some mile runners that will just pick up the race and go and hardly have any training. And it's a little crazy. That's crazy. But some people do it. And some people do it for the thrill, the pain, the experience. But again, maybe they're right. There's some craziness but all of us have some type of passion or goal or something that we want to do. I usually do stop people in their tracks, though, when they talk about when we talk about running and a 50-mile race. It was definitely not something easy, and some people think it's crazy they actually met somebody that ran 50 miles, where I'm here to tell you that there's a lot more runners doing 100 miles than there are 50, but usually they hit 50 before they get to 100, obviously, but there's definitely, with the races that I've been involved, there's definitely a lot more runners for the 100-mile run attempt, but than there is the 50. But the training is definitely harder than the actual race. Though it becomes easier to run 15 miles before the workday even begins. And some people don't even run 15 miles in a week, let alone even just in a race. Definitely sounds crazy, but not really. When you're in it, when you're doing it, things change, right? You develop experiences, you learn your lessons along the way. You have successes, whether they're natural or just hard work and grit. But I often hear when it comes to running that people hate running. They just despise it. And most of the time it's because they barely even get started. And then they start complaining about it and essentially just end up stopping running and they don't pursue it. Even some personal trainers will claim that you could do certain type of strength training with activities with weights and that require fast movements. And although those are great workouts, but nothing replaces actually running for runners. At one point, there was an MMA trainer that once told me that you could train all you want, but the true trainer or to know that you've gotten better is actually competition. So when you're face to face with that opponent, and I'm not suggesting that you have to run a race to actually compete. There was many times that I completed 30 miles and never joined a race. In fact, I only completed 10-mile race before I went to the 50. But again, that doesn't mean I obviously trained for it and ran other long distance miles, but didn't have a race. So you don't need to compete for that. You could run in a training program to actually get to that competition level, but you could still do it all on your own. But what I would compare it to, to be a better MMA fighter, you need to compete. But in order to become a better runner, you have to just run, right? In order to make better connections with your spouse, you actually have to make connections, right? In order to become a better business owner, operator, business partner, you need to work on the business to become better with the business. When a lot of business owners get caught up in the middle of it and they're in the business versus working on. And then obviously there's a lot of things out there that talk about that. But there's definitely one reason why I'm a lousy fisherman and a golfer is because I don't work on them at all, right? Maybe a few times a year, usually for outings, and the results will always show itself. And so for the last couple of years, even myself, I've been off on running, right? So I haven't ran 10 miles in 3 years, but I've been consistent to a certain degree. The kids' schedules definitely went through the roof and has some conflicts with it. But nonetheless, I still try to keep running, but this year especially, the running has just stunk, right? I just not looking forward to it. Not doing long distances, and I definitely avoid it at all cost, for the most part, right? Just like many others out there. I mean, it was harder. Again, not looking forward to it. But as the summer progressed, I did more as time went on, and here it is that but when I'm recording this, summer is winding down a little bit. And so it's coming to an end here shortly, probably in the next month or so. And then, you know, I realize the mornings I wake up for these runs, they're getting easier, right? Even the desire is there, right? So I'm running more, it's getting easier. Uh, I look forward to it, versus, go back a few months ago, I would wake up and find every reason not to run, just like most people would. And then it just took a little discipline over a period of time. Obviously, it didn't happen overnight, but it took some discipline to keep going. And even throughout the summer, if you compare my pace from just a few months ago, it's definitely better, to a point where I feel like anytime you get in the 10-minute mile pace, you're doing pretty good. And there's people out there that's, trying to get the 7, 8 minute miles. All the power to you. It's not everybody's, especially for ultra runners. It's just not. I mean, sure, so there are ultra runners that run a 100-mile run at an 8-minute mile pace. Most are not like that. And so you find a little groove. Most of the time between 10 and 12-minute miles are great. A lot of training runs are 14, 15-minute mile runs, just to prevent injury, just to get time on the feet. And there's no point of going too fast when you don't need to. So my pace is definitely improved, and obviously I'm now ready to keep increasing the miles, but it didn't start overnight, right? So even for me, when I started out at the beginning of the summer, or spring rather, let's go back, I wanted to start out small because injuries do progress when you move too fast. So, start off with 1 mile, right? So I would literally run 1 mile a week, and then occasionally I would fit in the second mile, right? So 1 mile here, 1 mile there, and it just kind of spread out. Some people would say, what's the point? But obviously, I was still working through things, right? And fighting that battle just like everybody else does, right? Then it went from 1 mile to 2 miles, and then at 2 miles one time a week to occasionally 2 times a week, and then increasing it to 3 times a week, even though it's only 2 miles, right? So like some of the runners may be listening to this that 2 miles isn't much, but busy lifestyles. I still work out other days of the week. I got an accountability partner for that one. And so there's other training going on. It's not like I wasn't doing anything at all, but obviously things are progressing, and, just like everything else, right? And it's the same thing when I was training for the 50-mile run to begin with. It was all baby steps, all just incremental steps. You went too far, too fast, it usually cause injuries. And so you don't want to do that. And so, and especially as some of us runners that are a little bit older, or as we age, we need to take precaution, because our recovery time isn't the same as it used to be. And even just, I call them quirks, right? So certain days you wake up and there's certain quirks that are there, and you have to adapt to them, right? So over time you keep increasing it, and it's time on your feet and time between the ears. And so there's a lot to think about, a lot of talking, not only with you if you have a running accountability partner, which in the past I definitely have, and I probably need one again, but they definitely help as a sounding board, bounce goals off of, even if they're ridiculous, and any other challenges that may occur. You're bouncing it off somebody else to actually get some type of feedback on, right? But even in the winter months, you adapt and you move to treadmills and try to maintain certain things. And so my goal, even for this year, this winter, is to keep maintaining. Hopefully, I'll get up to, maybe 7 miles for each run, 2 to 3 times a week. That's pretty good. And then trying to get to, by the springtime, get to 25 miles a week, maybe progress over the next summer to get to 30, 35 miles a week. And then I'm ready for that 50K, right? And so it's definitely a work in progress, right? And hopefully one day the end goal is to actually get to that that 100-mile run, and one day I'll get there. But it'll just take some time, a lot of conflicts with schedules, but the training definitely will get there, right? It's about the journey. It's not about where you're headed. And even though you hear that a lot, but once you experience it, it's definitely more true than anything else, right? And so it's definitely a better experience than the actual race itself. The race is fun, right? You have a lot more experiences. You get to meet people, and there's obviously aid stations and stops along the way, and the scenery. It's usually something different than what you've been training in. Keeps your mind focused. It's definitely the journey along the way that keeps you going. And the same goes with any type of business or business owners out there listening to this podcast. You got your lows and you got your highs, right? And so, in the beginning, in the middle, I would say, I'm in the middle. I would say myself personally, we're in the lows, right? A lot of lows, rather. And so there are highs. We keep moving along, but there's a lot of lows. And then, I hear when you get toward the end, there's a lot more highs. But it's definitely about the challenges you go along, the training runs, right? The mornings you wake up and you're not ready to do it, and you figure out a way to get out there. It's about the runs that you quit early because you couldn't finish for one reason or another. Had plenty of those along the way, and I'm sure there are days in business, and I can admit to this, where days you get up and you start working and you just want to quit for the day. That's it. It's nothing's working for you. Everything is crashing, and you just want to give up, right? And sometimes just taking a break, right? And so walking away from the desk, going for a walk, makes all the difference in the world. But as time goes on, you change, right? And so the conversations change between the years. The biggest conversation there is, maybe it's conversations with your accountability partner, whether it's in business or in some other personal goal or activity that you're trying to do. It's discipline to stay the course, right? It's so easy. There's too many distractions. There always has been distractions, more so today, especially with devices, and we get off our game, right? And so there's other things that get in the way, some other urgent matters that come up that may not be as urgent, but they become more urgent because you presented it that way. But you adapt and you keep moving, right? And so in running, I know a lot of adaptation was, based on, cross training to prevent the injuries, and then cross training because of injuries, right? And so in business, you try different marketing things, you try different sales things, you try different people, different markets, different verticals, different software, different technology, different automation, till you find a groove that actually works. And the unfortunate part, whether you're working on a personal goal or if it's in business, a lot of things that end up working end up changing course. You have to adapt. You have to make a move. There's a lot of things, in a running environment. The trail run you used to go on changes, right? For any given reason. It could be terrain that changes for, because of weather or construction. They're working on things, and or it could be because you want to change, right? Because the boredom is harder, the terrain is harder. So you want to move somewhere else, or you want to make it easier, you want to make it harder. Same thing in business, right? Things are working, you tap into it a little bit harder, right? Until it doesn't. Then you have to shift gears and start all over again. Or in some cases, it's not even starting all over. You just have to find the avenue that was kind of working. Maybe that one's working this time. You have to flip flop and go the other way. Always have to stay on the A game, right? And the same thing with training or having a personal goal. You just have to keep at it, right? Because you're going to have a lot more lows than you do highs. So these changes occur all the time. But even in business, and I personally experience this too, is as you go along, your experiences change, your decisions change, how you go about things definitely change. But the biggest thing is, who you become along the way, right? And so even just the more you have to manage, your decisions change, right? Similar to adulting. People could relate this a lot, right? Decisions you made when you were single are different when you get married. When you start having kids, your decisions change again. When the kids start growing up, your decisions change, right? It just keeps constantly changing. And so even with business, right, as you grow, the revenue grows. You get the first 50,000, and then 100,000, and then there's consistency, and then it keeps going that way. Your decisions then are definitely going to be different than when you're at a million, and it just keeps going, right? And sure, there's a lot more vulnerability in some parts, but you have a lot more adaptability I know one business guy had said that the more they grew, the more he felt buoyant. He's not sinking underwater anymore, but he still has the struggles, right? And so, but he knows he can keep his head above water over a period of time. It's about staying the course and keeping at it. Because obviously, if you take a break, kind of like in running, you're starting all over again. But the good news is those life experiences that you got along the way, it's going to be easier to ramp back up. Obviously, you have to take the time to commit and get there. And it goes back to, you hear this all the time. It's the journey, it's not the destination. And until you actually live through that, it's hard to understand it more than just a quote. But the challenges we pick up along the way make who we are and make us better as we move forward.